everybody, football fans. This is Rick from Buffer State Sports, and today is the 29th day of January, 2022, the year of our Lord. And what I have in front of me is an interview with Mike Pereira, the rules official for the United States Football League. You can see the headline there for yourself. And this is an interesting article. I want to bring it to you, and in case you haven't seen it yet. Of course, there's a lot of blogs out there already about this, but I have my own opinions, so I'd like to go into it. So, the head of officiating, Mike Pereira, was a guest on the Green Light podcast with Chris Long, and a lot of their conversation focused on the rules in 2022. For the United States Football League. Here's one of the quotes. "All I know is I'm going to run the officiating," says Pereira. "I'm on the ops call each week, and so I'm a part of it, and the fun part. I'm a committee of one, a rules committee almost of one." So obviously he has a lot of influence on the rules for the United States Football League. But he did say almost of one, which means that there are other influencers involved. Doesn't sound like very many, but there is some council of officiating that is setting the rules for the USFL. Now, it's interesting because they're still talking about rules, and we're sitting here in January. There's some rush about this because you got to get all that in before you start even thinking about player selection because the rules are going to have a lot to do with what player selection you choose. You don't want a guy who doesn't fit a particular scheme, or you think is going to be constantly committing penalties. That could be a big deal. So he goes on to say, another quote, "We're going to do some different things. Like, you don't like that roughing? The passer call," well, this is bad formatting, but we're going to do some things different. Like, you don't like that roughing the passer call that was made? Well, guess what? I'm in the replay center, and I don't either. So we're going to take it off. We're going to get rid of it. You get called for a hit on a defensive player, and it's a big hit, but it's a shoulder to the chest, and it was called. Well, we're going to take it off. Okay, well, I mean, that is interesting. He goes on, he finishes up by saying, "So we're going to do some things that are a bit different that I think will be good for the game." Here's the thing. Here's why I'm kind of iffy, 50-50 on this. I've been a football fan my entire life. I'm in the 50-year-old bracket. So I've got, quite a bit of history under me when it comes to professional football, college football, the whole thing. I've experienced it all. And there is something to say about the refs having a pulse on the game. Have you noticed that there's some games where it seems that people are getting constantly called for pass interference, and then there's other games where there's a lot of chucking going on, a lot of things happening between the offensive and defensive player, whether it's wide receivers, tight ends, running backs, somebody coming out and being defended in a rough fashion, where things are being called very closely. There's a difference between games. There's a vibe to games, and what I don't want to see is the vibe of the game go into a booth with a guy who's totally disconnected from what's going down on the field. I don't really want to see that in any form of professional or even college football. That's what makes football something you can talk about. it's okay to have referees who have a pulse on the game, who see things a little bit different than the fans. I'm a Hurricane fan. The 2002 Fiesta Bowl was not fun. Okay, there was a super late call made, pass interference, that took the game into overtime, and the Ohio State Buckeyes pulled it out. If we had then what we're talking about now, maybe that could have been corrected. But, we've had years of discussion. We've had years of fighting and jostling between Ohio State Buckeye fans and Miami Hurricane fans. I don't want any of that to go away, really. I mean, that's what makes football so interesting, is it's not always fair. There are elements of football that are based on human nature. If we get too robotic with this, it's not football anymore. Now it's like watching Congress or watching Joe Biden at a press conference. It's stale and usual and exactly what you would expect it to be. I don't want staleness. I want there to be referees who have a final say on the field, who experience the vibes going on down on the field. I want them to be able to talk to Mike Pereira and say, Mike, you don't understand what's going on in the field. You see, I missed a big holding call over here, and I'm giving them back some, something. Okay? That's a terrible example because, we all know that doesn't happen in football. It's a terrible example, yes, but you get my gist. There's stuff that goes down on the field that we can't eliminate that from football, or it ceases to be football and becomes more like a Tecmo Bowl. You understand? It becomes a video game, and that's not cool. So let's go on. So he talks about the NFL's pass interference penalty, where one could call it, when one could get a net of 40 yards. So you're on the 42-yard line and you chuck it into the end zone. Think of a Patrick Mahomes who could do that with the flick of a wrist. And in the end zone, there's a pass interference where, the probability of pass interference in the end zone on a play of 40-plus yards in the air is going to be higher because there's a lot of there's kind of an element of panic there. So in the NFL, you would get the ball on the 2-yard line, be first and goal. Well, that's not cool because, there's this high factor for that. So I like the college rules better in that you get a 15-yard penalty. It creates a more docile situation. It's not so panic mode, but now both players, the defensive player and the offensive player, can focus on their particular role. If you don't like that argument, that's cool. This is Buffer State Sports. It's my argument. And, you may have a different one. So they say, we're going to go to the college rule. Maximum is going to be a 15-yard penalty instead, unless somebody deliberately tackles a guy, like you saw on the play in the NCAA championship game, right? The guy got beat by a double move, grabbed the jersey, pulled him down to the ground in a spot foul. Okay. If it's beyond 15 yards. So now we're going to begin to characterize from the booth whether somebody intended something. And yeah, sometimes it's very obvious, but sometimes it's not. So now we have a football god up in the press box who is going to be looking at this, or maybe not even in the press box. What if they get to the situation where they send a relay to New York? And the guy's in New York. Mike Ferrera's in New York. And he's looking at video just like we are. Doesn't even get the vibe down on the field. And they slow it down and notice that there's just a slight tug. You know, he's got his hand up on his shoulder and he just happens to get his index finger underneath his jersey. Is that going to be a spot foul? I mean, really. Here's another situation. How about those guys who inadvertently get their fingers caught up in a guy's face mask? Is that going to be now reviewable up in the booth? And Mike Ferrera is going to say, whoa, 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 slow everything down. There's a face mask on the field. Okay. There are consequences to these changes. And I just don't want to see the emotions and the vibe on the field affected by some robotic action that's taken by a football god. Not cool. Not to me anyway. Now, trying to get it right is awesome. But some of these things are really, really delicate. So then he goes on to say, we've got honestly great officials. 32 of the 35 are off the NFL's developmental list. They're the next group that will be going to the NFL. So I think it's going to be fun. And, okay, great. NFL's developmental list. That's cool. I kind of like the idea of developing your own officials based on your own rules, because there are obviously some rules that are going to be different from the NFL. When you're developing a referee, you want to develop them specifically to the vibe of the USFL. That's my opinion. So how about developing referees for the USFL and not conceding to the fact that you've got some kind of an inferior product by saying, oh, these are NFL's developmental list. Because I don't think you have an inferior product, USFL, or XFL for that matter. Any of these new leagues, I don't think that they have an inferior product. I think that they have the best product that they can have. And, maybe they won't have quite the divas that the NFL has, but I'm okay with that. I just want to see good football. I don't care about the stupid personalities. If a guy wants to kneel, okay, well, then maybe he should become a priest. That's what priests do. They kneel. So I've got problems with this this agenda of sports athletes having to have some say socially. I don't think that they have to have a social say. I think they could just work their job. Their job is to be an NFL player, right? Just be an NFL player. Play your game, right? Somebody wants to hear what you got to say about Russia. Well, let's do a separate thing where we bring in NFL players to talk about Russia. Okay, but that's just me. Again, I'm 50. I'm set in my ways. I watched an NFL that was a great product in the 80s. I loved it. Okay, I loved the NFL of the 70s. The 80s was a little bit of a better product. There were rule changes, but hey, what can I say? Anyway, I'm digressing. Goes on, he says, well, you're going to have to see some different technology in the USFL because now they're talking about technology. And here we go. Okay, get ready because I'm going to react to this. You may see the sticks go away. He says, I'm a fan of the tradition. I'd love to see the 75-year-old guys going out in the middle of the field, but there's going to be lasers. We think that the actual the actual measurement itself will probably go away. The sticks won't go away. Coming out in the middle of the field may go away. Now, I don't know. I don't think that necessarily going to be adopted by the NFL, but you will see some different technology in the USFL. A more consistent yellow line, 10 yards to gain, right? You got that yellow line that is never quite consistent. So if you're going to use a laser to have a more consistent line, okay. It makes the fan experience better. We can actually see, okay, so we got the football up across that line. It's going to be a first down, right? Because this year in the NFL, there were a couple occasions where the football, when it went across the line we were seeing, it ended up being a turnover on downs. Okay, so it was kind of like, what's the point of putting a line there if it's not going to be consistent? Because then the fans are like, what's going on, right? You want to cause controversy? That's how you do it. Get inconsistencies. So yeah, I'm okay with the laser line. I'm okay with being consistent. Let's just make it consistent. Make it consistent. And I think that's all that really the coaches want is consistency. If it's fourth down in inches in one game, it needs to be fourth down in inches in the next game. Consistency. Okay. So I'm okay with new technologies. Don't make it robotic, though. Please don't make it robotic. If we wanted video games, we would just play video games. We wouldn't watch the NFL. We wouldn't watch the XFL. We would not watch the USFL. We wouldn't watch any new leagues. Okay? We wouldn't watch anything. We turn off the TV. We take a sledgehammer and we crush the stupid thing if we wanted to see robots. Okay? That's not football. Robots are not football. And I don't want to see referees that are robots. I've heard that on some blogs. Like, what? That's really dumb. Okay? That's going to ruin football. It will ruin football. So, anyway, these 75-year-old guys running out in the middle of the field for a measurement, do we have to see that in our experience? Do the fans who are there at the stadium need to see that in their experience? Do the coaches need to experience that in order to feel, that there was a legitimate effort put into that measurement? Well, if they do, then we need to keep it. Okay? But if we can get more consistent and the coaches all agree to the consistency, then let's do the laser measurement. That's fine. I have no problem with that. Just be careful with your technology. Don't make it too robotic, or you're going to turn us off. All of us are going to turn off the TV. So, I think that was it. Yep, that was it. So now you know a little bit more about me. I'm not a robot guy. All right. If I wanted robots, it wouldn't be football. I mean, why don't we just have robots play football? Right? Because robots have no opinions, correct? So a robot's not going to take off his uniform and, wave to the fans and run off into the tunnels in the middle of a game, Antonio Brown fashion. Robots aren't going to do that, right? Robots are subservient to the people who control them. Humans are not subservient. Humans have all kinds of different thoughts and emotions. And it's okay to see those because, that's what makes football cool. Somebody gets taken down and beat half to death in the middle of a football game. All right, there's a consequence to it, yes. This guy's thrown out, right? But that's what makes football football, is that you got these humans competing on a field and humans act like humans. That's cool. I'm totally good with it. And it doesn't have to be perfect. A game with 10 fumbles could be just as good as a game with no fumbles. That's a fact. Okay? Depends on how the fumbles happen. If it's sloppy, nobody wants to see that football game. That's kind of like, watching the first game of the preseason. But I digress. That's all I got for you today, fellas. So from Captain Rick, this has been Buffer State Sports. God bless you and see you next time.